If we could be anywhere, where would it be?
I have the great pleasure today to discuss the Dutch car bond legal framework, legal amendments, and the effects out of this with a great panelist. Wolf, I think I don't need to introduce. He's just introduced himself and did a great speech. Thijs Naeije is from the funding team on the car bond side at ABN AMRO. Arnaud Guillaume-Lamy is from BNP Asset Management and the car bond specialist over there. Maureen Schuller is from ING as an analyst and car bond strategist. Is that correct, I hope? Great, thank you. The market actually in Holland, I think, faced some very interesting developments and changes. It's just about 9 years ago that we saw the first car bond out of Holland. That was in 2006. I still remember that was a 7-year ABN at that time, placed in the market in January 2006. And then we saw later on 2009 the first introduction of a, well, I call it a legal framework afterwards. We saw the introduction of pass-through car bonds, first time ever in the European space, and now we have the first legal framework that fully addresses CRR and all the relative and necessary requirements out there. So this market actually is well known for innovative stage and to address the most recent necessities and sort of the market developments in a best effort stage, I would say. We've got now 4 issues outstanding, which are fully registered with a covered bond volume of around 40 billion, which actually is quite sizable. But what I found very interesting, and I like to start with Thijs to ask him here what his experience is. What I found interesting compared to some other countries, that here we have a situation where before this legal amendment took place, we had a very long debate within the market, where bankers, lawyers, a few of those, Case, and I saw you around, were involved in this process as well, quite a few investors, talking with the officials, finance ministries and the DNB about this, which is not necessarily in understanding itself, since these days you would be a little bit skeptical about lobbyists trying to find something where banks all of a sudden get in a better position. So I guess this is a situation where others maybe can learn a bit. So Thijs, I would be very happy if you could sort of elaborate a little bit about how you saw this involvement from your stage. Did you really have a chance of influencing or just bring your arguments on the table, or were you just sort of heard for, for others to be nice to issuers? Would be great to have a few words on that.
To answer your question, I think Wolf would agree with me if I say that the DACB was the initiator to update the Dutch covered bond law. We, as issuers, were under the impression that the Dutch central bank was already doing a thorough supervision of our covered bonds. There is an annual registration process, and they ask from the side of DNB, they ask us a lot of questions, and we have to show that, for example, that all the processes are in good shape. Though when we spoke with investors, we always got the impression that investors did not give us the rewards for that regulation. And one of the very important factors is that it was not a law but a regulation. So we thought, okay, if we already have to fulfill a lot of requirements for the regulator, and a lot of the program requirements are already stricter than what's required in the law, why don't we start a conversation with the Ministry of Finance and with the Dutch Central Bank to update the law? And that was also with the developments in other countries. In background, other countries updated their law, or other countries introduced the law, and they could take back practices into account, and our law dated from 2008. So I would say that was the starting point, and we were very happy that the Ministry of Finance and the Dutch Central Bank were willing to put a lot of effort in the last, I would say, 18 months to update the law. And yeah, we were one of the parties, as Wolf just described, that gave information to the Ministry of Finance in that process.
Let me first of all start by saying that I'm very, very happy with the amendments that have been made to the Dutch regulatory regime. I think not only the introduction of the 5% OC requirement, but also the fact that the Dutch regulator has decided to fully align the legislation with the CRR requirements. Initially, and it's still there in the legislation, that at a later stage by ministerial regulation certain other asset classes could be introduced as well, but in the ministerial regulation published in December, that has not been the case. So at this stage, the framework is really fully aligned with the CRR. I think the law was received very well. I think the performance of the Dutch covered bonds since the first amendments were announced, the proposals for the amendments already illustrates that the changes have been received very well. I think Dutch covered bonds within the core European market has been the outperforming covered bonds segment. And also, if you look at the trading levels of Dutch covered bonds today, they are almost as tight as some of the German covered bonds. So it's one of the richer trading covered bond segments today. And that is really not only due to limited issuance from the Netherlands or increased comfort maybe after last year, for example, Moody's affirmed its ratings on the Dutch sovereign. But in my view, I think the main explanation here is really the amendments that have been made to the legal framework. So from that perspective, I would say it has been received very well.
If we could be anywhere, where would it be? Take what we need and disappear. If we keep holding